It is the trade deadline. A lot of things go into the trade deadline. But one thing that I think that many people don't know is, what is it like for a player to be traded in the middle of the season? Like, what happens once you're traded? What are some of the things you got to deal with? And how does the team help you out? I've been asked these isolated questions one-off kind of over the years, but I thought today we'd talk about it. So when players get traded, these are the main things that happen. Now, you got to know, I've been traded before. So I was traded, but I was traded in the offseason. Okay, so in the offseason between 2012 and 2013, I was in the minor leagues. I was traded in the offseason along with Vance Worley for Ben Revere to the Twins from the Phillies. So I've been in a trade, and to be honest, I found out about that trade on Twitter in 2012. So you can only imagine what it's like 13 years later. It's crazy. Also, in 2023, I was heavily floated as a person that could be traded, but from the Oakland Athletics at the time to someone who needed back-end bullpen help, because at that time I was the closer and I was throwing really well. And it never came to fruition, which was to this day a little baffling, but I also had that anxiety IL stuff at the beginning of the year, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit if no one wanted to deal with that. So that sucks. I don't know. That's not based on any sort of extra knowledge at all, but it just was a little bit odd. Anyways, that's not what I meant to talk about. So I have experience with trades and the trade deadline, but there are some rules that are followed, and there are some. It's like a protocol for once you're traded, how things work, and frankly, a lot of it sucks. And for me, I would have absolutely despised this. Fortunately, I didn't have a young family. I didn't have any kids or anything, which will make all this stuff so much worse. So just imagine everything I said, but also with like 2 kids under 5 or something, which is like half the league. So when you are traded, there are 2 ways you usually find out. If you are at the field, you are usually called into the GM or into the manager's office, and the GM or the president of baseball operations or someone from the executive team sits you down and says, "Hey, you've been traded. Thank you so much for your service. We got a good deal. We think you're going to do a great job over there, and go make us regret it." That's like something they love to say is like, you know what? I am more than happy to regret letting you go because you've played so well. Whether or not they mean that, it probably depends on the person, but you're usually told, or they try to, told by someone in, your orbit. But this is at the field. If it's in the middle of the game, you get pulled off the field, you just know, and then they tell you, right? That could happen, or you get scratched for the game, or right after the game, they'll call you in. It almost feels like you're getting sent down, which sucks. But in reality, you're just about to go to another team. The second part of that, if you're not at the field, it is very likely that you find out on social media. Very likely, because these insiders are so on top of this, the Jeff Passons, the John Heymans of the world, they're so quick with the story that the chances that if you don't see it on Twitter or Instagram or wherever, if you don't see it, someone in your family or one of your friends is going to see it, and they are going to call/text you immediately. This is very prevalent, especially in like basketball and football, because they're very close to vest with those things too, and it's kind of slow to roll it out. But in baseball, it also exists. So the number of guys that find out on social media, or someone else finds out on social media and then tells them before anyone else can tell them, is very high. Very high. So usually you're hearing from the GM at some point, and then the other GM will call you. In my case, I was called by the Twins GM before Ruben Amaro, the Phillies GM, called me, which I wasn't super pumped about, but I'll be honest, it kind of tracked with how that kind of worked at the time. So ideally, you want to hear from your team and then swap over and start discussing with the next team. If you are renting an apartment or a house, which is most players, players who have purchased places in the city that they play usually have long-term contracts. And if they have a big investment in that city, there's a no trade clause. They got to be in the situation. They got to be in the process. So they usually find out just by, context. usually. So most people are either renting or staying in the hotel or whatever. And in this case, the hotel is even better. But what you really do is when you have an apartment or you have a house that you're renting an Airbnb, Airbnbs are usually month by month, so that's okay. But if you have a lease going through the season, there is a stipulation in the CBA, which there's another positive thing that players fought for, is that all you have to do is hand your keys over to the team, and they are now responsible, the team you were just on. They are now responsible for your rent for the rest of that lease, okay? So now it's their responsibility. You are off the hook, and any paperwork or any reimbursement that happens is between you and the team, and you should have to not worry about that at all. Of course, that doesn't go super smoothly every time, but at least the financial part of it is easily figured out. The vast majority of the time, the team then takes those keys and then sublets it to somebody else on the team. For example, in 2018, when I was brought back up after Ryan Presley was traded as the fourth trade that year, I was back up from AAA, and a month or so before, Tyler Kinley, current, shout out to TK, current reliever for the Rockies, had been DFA'd by the Twins and had vacated his apartment, so it was empty, and they were just paying for it. Like, hey, do you want this apartment? I said, sure. I moved into it, and it was in the second floor above a Target in one of the noisiest places on the planet, and it was maybe the worst experience I've ever made. But it was nice to at least have here's the keys, turnkey, go live. So usually that's what happens. The problem with that is you, as a player, usually have to report to the park right away. You usually get like 1 day of buffer. Hopefully, if you're lucky, there's like an off day or something, or they're about to travel to another city, so you get a day to kind of figure out your affairs. But 98% of that stuff falls on your family, your significant other, and your kids. I'll be honest, this picture is a little bit sad for those of you watching it. And I don't really like the eye contact this moving gentleman is making with my wife. But that is how it usually works. The player packs their bag, their big suitcase, jamming as much crap into it as possible, and then their baseball bag, and they get on a flight and they meet the team where they are. They just continue on, and then it's up to your family and also the team. Like the clubhouse staff will come out and help move things or move stuff out if they need moved out or whatever. But a lot of this burden goes on your family to take care of this stuff. And so shout out to all the families out there that make playing professional baseball possible, because without you, it's impossible. And anyone who's single and doesn't have a family usually lives out of a suitcase anyway. So everything they had can fit. And then they'll have like a box or two. So they'll just take it to the field, have them store it, or they'll just have them ship it somewhere and whatever. But which in many ways is easier, but is also kind of sad because you're kind of on your own. So,
Kratz, at some point, we're going to laugh about how healthcare was so reactive and not proactive. And we're starting to change that with Superpower. They believe every human has 100+ year potential, and they're here to help you get there. I'm a big believer in this. I just started the journey, so I'm excited about it. And what do you think?
As a player, you're always looking ways to improve yourself, improve your health. And this is an easy way. Superpower's made it way easier than when I was playing. You had to go get all these lab panels, and it was a long, drawn-out, expensive process. But now with Superpower, so this is awesome for me. I'm excited about it.
They'll send a licensed professional to your home, or you can visit a nearby lab. For a limited time, the FT fam can get $50 off an annual Superpower membership by using code FOUL at checkout. Just head to superpower.com and use code FOUL to get our exclusive discount. Your biology decoded, your blueprint activated with Superpower. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, and please support FT and tell them we sent you.
problem is you don't have time to help your family, and I would have struggled, I think, with that, with just having her handle everything. That would suck. And then once all of that is taken care of and your life has been flipped upside down, you're figuring out now where you're going to live, you know, getting used to the environment, whatever, and then you have to then go meet your teammates. And for guys who haven't been around very long, this is even harder. But it's a little bit easier if you're a veteran guy that you know that the team knows of you and you've been around for a while. So, what do you have to do when you get over there in a very quick amount of time? You have to figure out your role. For example, we have Josh Naylor here. He's got to figure out where he hits in the order. What is he then expected to do in that place in the order? How many times he could play? How often he's playing. He's playing first base. Is he going to DH? What's it like playing first base every day in Seattle? Like, there's all this stuff on the surface that you have to get used to. But then on top of all of that, you have to figure out where you fit in the clubhouse, who you vibe with players wise, and where you sit in the hierarchy of service time. Like, does this team have a bunch of leaders? Did you just come from a team where you were the leader, or you were the guy they looked to because you weren't on a very good team or whatever, and like you weren't ready? Like, maybe that's not a job you wanted, but it was just the nature of what you had to do. And now suddenly you are more of a role player or more of a contributor to the team, and you don't need to be on the mic on the bus, and you don't have to do all the rah-rah speeches or whatever. For example, Ryan McMahon was the veteran on Colorado. From what I've heard anecdotally from people who have been in that clubhouse, it was like a graveyard in there every single day. No one talking to each other. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is awful. Get me out of here, right? Let's just go. Let's do our job and get out of here because things are not very fun right now. And that's a very hard place to be. Then he goes over to New York, where it's a little bit kind of tumultuous also, but it's New York City now. And you have to figure out if they have Aaron Judge. They have a captain. Like, you don't have to worry about leading, but now you have to worry about performance, like winning the games much more than you just were. Everyone wants to worry about winning the games. Let me just be very clear here. We would prefer to be like, winning is everything, and that's all we're worried about doing. But sometimes you're just so bad that winning's very hard to do, and it is absolutely daunting and exhausting to like try to keep that energy all the time when it's not really reasonable yet because your team doesn't know what to do yet, right? So no matter what you do, no matter what you try to do mentally and mindset-wise, sometimes it's super duper hard. So this is what I thought was the hardest part, was figuring all of this stuff out. And you have to do it in one day. We're going to talk about a guy later in the news, about a guy who literally had switched teams that day and then was pitching in a doubleheader, right? Sir Anthony Dominguez pitched against his other team. He just walked to the other clubhouse, put on a different jersey, and then pitched against the team he was on hours before. That's crazy, right? He doesn't know anybody. He just went out to the bullpen and warmed up. It's like he was a guest, like a celebrity guest or something on the team. That's crazy. It felt like an all-star game for him, I'm sure. But he's been around long enough that he probably had run into some of the people. So the longer you play, there's probably some crossover, a couple guys that you know already that you can then feel comfortable talking to, and then you get kind of going. It's a quick process, and most guys who've been around for a while are good at it. But if you don't get off the ground running, it can be insane, right? For example, McMahon, again, as an example, he needs to play well right away. There's no time for a buffer period. You were traded for a specific reason. You need to be able to do that immediately. That can be, if that's like a first impressions are the most important thing situation, sometimes that is very important, right? Also, imagine you're a pitcher. You now have to get on the same page with a catcher that may or may not have caught you before right now. He's got to know what you want to do, where you want to throw it, and how you operate, and how you think today. And especially for relievers, if that isn't close to dialed in yet, you could make stupid mistakes just because you don't understand each other that could lead to a blow-up inning that is exactly the opposite of what you were traded for to do. So that can be, like, if you're out there like, he doesn't know what I want to do, coming from a situation where you were very dialed in that way, that could throw you off hard, and then it could spiral. And that's what you want to avoid more than anything. And that's one of the hardest things to do. I can't imagine what it's like to be Danny Jansen and have to go learn a whole team. But when the catcher's moving, at least they're thinking, I'm learning the whole team, as opposed to one pitcher. The catcher's like, I got this one pitcher, but I know everybody else, so I don't need to put a bunch of effort into this. And that could be a problem. So just something to keep in mind when these guys are moving around, because there are things happening behind the scenes that they are not in control of, and it can really, really suck. But those are the main things that go through in a trade. It sounds pretty straightforward, but there's a lot spinning up here, and you're still supposed to focus on not only playing well, but playing for a team that is presumably better than the team you were just on, and you are going to take more of an active role on. So even, especially if you're not playing at your peak, it can be added pressure in an instant, and that can be an issue. And I think that we see sometimes guys, that happens to guys, and they get a little bit buried, and they don't get a lot of grace, which sometimes you need. And if you don't get a lot of grace, it's just seen as a failure. And then you feel like a failure. You got to deal with that. So added pressure, it's like going from cold to super hot immediately. So keep that in mind when you're seeing these guys move places. Sometimes it might take a couple days. If we can avoid getting on them in their first and second outings or at-bats or whatever, if we can avoid that, it's going to be better long-term. Just throwing that out there. But that is what happens when a player, especially at the trade deadline, is traded. Isn't that interesting? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and if it sounds easy and that you could do it, because I bet you, all of you could do this easy. So I don't even know what the point is of even telling you. I don't even understand.